I'm Christopher Miller. I'm 30 years old, and my own mother kicked me out of the house on Christmas Day, just moments after I'd served her a turkey that I paid for, in a home that I was paying the mortgage on. Before I tell you about the explosive fallout that tore my family apart and, ultimately, set me free, do me a favor and let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's always incredible to see how far these stories can reach. Alright, let's get into it. The snow was falling outside the dining room window, big, gentle flakes that seemed to muffle the sounds of the world. It looked like a postcard. Inside, the house smelled of roasted turkey, cinnamon, and pine from the Christmas tree I'd set up in the living room. Everything was perfect. Or at least I had engineered it to be. I wanted just for one day to feel like we were a normal, happy family. I had just set the platter of golden brown turkey on the table. My mom, Janet, was seated at the head. My younger sister, Laura, was scrolling through her phone, and my Aunt Carol was nursing a glass of wine. "Looks wonderful, Chris," Aunt Carol said, offering a weak smile. I nodded, feeling a small flicker of pride. "Thanks. Hope everyone's hungry." I sat down, picked up my fork, and was about to take my first bite when my mother cleared her throat. She didn't look at me. She stared at a spot on the wall just over my shoulder. "Christopher," she began, her voice calm, almost casual. "I think it's time you found your own place. You need to move out." The fork in my hand stopped halfway to my mouth. The clinking of silverware around the table ceased. The only sound was the soft crackle of the fire in the hearth. I slowly lowered my fork, making sure the movement was deliberate, controlled. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. "Really?" I asked, my voice betraying none of the chaos erupting in my chest. I looked her straight in the eyes. "Why is that?" She finally met my gaze, her expression unreadable. "It's just time. You're 30 years old. Laura needs her space. I need my space." I took a slow breath. "I see. Well, just to be clear, I pay the rent, or rather, the mortgage. I pay the electricity, the gas, the internet, and the family phone plan. I also buy the groceries, including, this entire meal." My voice was steady, a reporter stating facts. My mother's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. She just picked up her knife and fork and cut a piece of turkey, as if I just commented on the weather. Aunt Carol froze, her wine glass hovering near her lips, her eyes wide. My sister, Laura, the golden child, refused to look up from her plate. She suddenly found her mashed potatoes incredibly fascinating. Her silence was louder than my mother's words. It was an endorsement. I looked around the table at the scene I had so carefully constructed. The warm lights, the festive decorations, the abundant food. It all felt like a sham, a stage for a play I didn't know I was the villain of. I stood up slowly. My chair made a quiet scraping sound on the hardwood floor. "Excuse me," I said. No one replied. That was the drop that made the cup overflow. But to understand why that cup was already filled to the brim, we have to go back 1 year. To the day I got the phone call that changed everything. A year before that Christmas dinner, my life was my own. I had a great apartment on the 12th floor of a downtown building. It wasn't fancy, but the floor-to-ceiling windows gave me a sprawling view of the city skyline that made me feel like I was on top of the world. My routine was simple. Wake up, hit the gym in the building, grab a coffee from the shop downstairs, and walk to work. I had my friends, my space, my peace. It was a life I had built for myself, brick by brick, with every long hour I put in at the office. I was a software engineer, and I was good at it. I was finally truly independent. My father had passed away 5 years prior. His death left a void that nothing could fill. He was my rock, my moral compass. The house we grew up in wasn't just a house. It was a monument to his hard work. I remembered him on ladders in the summer, painting the trim, and on his knees in the garden, planting the rose bushes my mom loved. "This house is our foundation, Chris," he told me once, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's more than just wood and nails. It's where we're safe. Always protect it." Those words were etched into my soul. After he was gone, my mom assured me she had everything under control. I offered to help with the bills, but she waved me off. Don't be silly, honey. I have your father's life insurance. I'll be fine. You go build your own life. So I did, believing her. Then came the phone call on that gray Tuesday afternoon. My phone buzzed, and Mom flashed on the screen. I answered with a smile. Hey Mom, what's up? Her voice came back as a choked, desperate whisper. Chris? Oh, Chris. Instantly, my smile vanished. My heart leaped into my throat. Mom, what's wrong? Are you okay? The house, she sobbed, the words cracking. The bank sent another letter. Final one. They're going to take the house. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. What are you talking about? I thought you were making the mortgage payments. You said you were fine. I tried, she wailed, her voice escalating into a full-blown cry. I really did, but my part-time job cut my hours and the insurance money. It just ran out so fast. I didn't want to worry you. I was so ashamed. Foreclosure. The word was like a punch to the gut. All I could see was my father's face, his proud smile as he stood on the freshly mowed lawn. Always protect it. His words echoed in my head, a solemn command. Losing that house felt like failing him in the most fundamental way. How much do you need, Mom? How far behind are you? My mind was already a frantic calculator, numbers and budgets swirling. They said I'm 3 months behind, she sniffled. It's thousands of dollars, Chris. I don't have it. I have nothing left. There was no decision to be made. It was an instinct, a duty, my father's command. Don't worry, Mom, I said, my voice firm, projecting a confidence I didn't feel. I'll handle it. I'll take care of it. We are not losing the house. The relief in her voice was a palpable thing. Oh, Chris, thank you. Thank you. That weekend, I was packing my life into cardboard boxes. I paid a $2,000 penalty to break my lease. As the movers carried the last box out of my apartment, I stood by the window, taking one final look at the skyline that had been the backdrop to my freedom. I told myself it was temporary, a noble sacrifice. When I arrived back at my childhood home, my mom threw her arms around me, hugging me with a desperate strength. Oh, Chris, she whispered into my shoulder, her voice thick with staged emotion. You're saving me. You're my hero. I hugged her back, smelling the familiar scent of her perfume, and felt a swell of pride. I was doing the right thing. I was being a good son. I was honoring my father. I had no idea I wasn't just saving the house. I was signing away my life. The first month was a whirlwind of financial damage control. I wrote a check to the bank that made my hand shake, catching up the 3 months of missed mortgage payments. Then I set up an automatic transfer for the $1,200 monthly payment. That alone was more than my old rent. Then came the utilities. $150 for electricity and gas. The internet was $80. The family phone plan, which my mom had conveniently put in my name years ago and forgotten about, was another $120. Then there were the groceries. My mother, it turned out, had developed a taste for organic everything. The weekly shopping bill was never less than $200. I remember standing in the grocery store one evening, exhausted after a 10-hour workday. I had a nice ribeye steak in my hand, a little treat for myself. Then I looked at the list my mom had texted me. Organic kale, gluten-free bread, imported olive oil. I did the math in my head. I put the steak back. I bought the kale. More than half my salary was gone before I could even think about my own needs. My student loan payments felt like a lead weight. My car insurance, my own phone bill, my desire to put something, anything, into savings. It all became a distant dream. My best friend, Mark, saw the train wreck coming from a mile away. We met up for a beer, and it was the first time I'd seen him in a month. You look like hell, man, he said bluntly, taking a sip of his beer. I just shrugged, too tired to argue. It's been a lot. I'm serious, he said, leaning forward. How's it really going over there? It's fine, I said, a little too quickly. I'm getting things under control. It's just temporary. Mark gave me a look, the one that said he wasn't buying it for a second. Chris, we've been friends since we were freshmen. I know your mom. Remember when your dad was sick, and she bought that brand new SUV because she deserved something nice to get her through the stress? Remember when Laura wanted to go on that school trip to Europe, and she convinced you to cash out some of your savings bonds your grandparents gave you, promising to pay you back? I winced. He was right. I had forgotten about that. Or rather, I had chosen to forget. She never did pay me back. This is different, I insisted, though my voice lacked conviction. This is the house. Dad's house. I can't let her lose it. And she knows that, Mark countered, his voice firm but kind. That's the button she's pushing. It's the biggest, shiniest button she has. And she's leaning on it with all her weight. I'm just telling you, man. Be careful. Don't set yourself on fire to keep them warm. They'll just watch you burn and complain that the light is flickering. His words stayed with me, an uncomfortable splinter in my mind. But I pushed them away. He didn't understand. This was my family. This was my duty. But the burden was an invisible one. My mom and sister saw the lights stay on, the fridge stay full, the Wi-Fi never drop. They didn't see the mounting credit card debt I was accumulating to cover the gaps. They didn't see me eating ramen for lunch at my desk to save money. They didn't see the invitations from friends that I had to constantly turn down. Sorry, guys. Can't make it this weekend. I'm swamped. It was a lie. I wasn't swamped. I was broke. The isolation was the worst part. I was living in a house with 2 other people, yet I felt completely and utterly alone. I was a ghost in my own life, silently funding a world that I was no longer a part of. The gratitude from that first day was long gone, replaced by a quiet, heavy, soul-crushing expectation. The transition from grateful recipient to entitled queen was so gradual I almost didn't notice it happening. The talk of my mom finding a job vanished completely after the first month. It was replaced by a litany of excuses. I looked online today, Chris, she'd announced with a theatrical sigh. There's just nothing for a woman my age with my skill set. Her skill set, as far as I could tell, was watching daytime television and managing her book club's social calendar. With the assumption of permanence came the demands. They started small, couched as suggestions. You know, Chris, I saw a commercial for this wonderful new face cream. It's supposed to take 10 years off your skin. We should get some. We was a pronoun she used often when she meant you. The biggest shift came with her social life. Now that the threat of foreclosure was gone, she was eager to reclaim her status among her friends. This culminated in her announcing she was hosting her book club. It'll be lovely, she said, beaming. Just a few ladies over for some wine and cheese. A little normalcy. I came home from work that Friday to a house full of her friends. Music was playing, wine was flowing. My mom, holding court in the living room, gestured to me as I walked in, exhausted and disheveled. Oh, everyone. This is my wonderful son, Christopher. He's been such a help around the house. I felt like the hired help. I gave a tight smile, mumbled a hello, and escaped to my room. An hour later, she knocked on my door. Chris, honey, could you be a dear and run to the store? We're out of Chardonnay. She was already holding out a $20 bill. A single 20, for a bottle of wine that I knew cost at least that much, not to mention the 3 other bottles they'd already consumed. I took the 20, went to the store, and paid for 2 more bottles with my own debit card. When I got back, she didn't even thank me. She just took the bag and said, "Oh, good, you're back," before turning back to her friends. I spent the rest of the night in my room, listening to their laughter, feeling my resentment curdle into a hard, bitter knot in my stomach. The next morning, I was the one who had to clean up the wine glasses and cheese plates they'd left scattered around the house. Laura, meanwhile, was living in a blissful bubble, completely insulated from the financial reality. As far as she was concerned, money was an abstract concept that magically appeared whenever she needed it. A new phone, concert tickets, a weekend trip with her friends. She'd just go to Mom, who would then come to me. The final straw in this phase of my disillusionment came during a work-from-home day. I was on a conference call with my team, discussing a critical bug in our software. My mom chose that exact moment to start vacuuming right outside my bedroom door. I muted my microphone and opened the door. "Mom, please," I whispered urgently. I'm on a really important call for work. She turned off the vacuum with an annoyed huff. Well, excuse me for trying to keep a clean house. Some of us don't get to sit in a chair all day talking. Later, I tried to explain it to her calmly. Mom, that job, the one you think is just me sitting and talking, is paying the mortgage on this house. Her face went from annoyed to furious in a split second. Her voice dropped to a low, venomous hiss. Don't you dare throw that in my face. I am your mother. This is my house. You are living here under my roof. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it left me speechless. She had completely rewritten reality. In her mind, she was the benevolent landlord, and I was the ungrateful tenant who was lucky to be there. I just stared at her, and in her cold, defiant eyes, I saw that the woman I thought I was saving was gone. In her place was a stranger, and I was trapped with her. In the middle of the escalating Cold War at home, my job became my only refuge. The office was a place of logic and reason, where effort was rewarded and competence was valued. It was everything my home was not. My boss, Mr. Henderson, was a man in his late 50s, sharp, demanding, but ultimately fair. He didn't care about your personal life. He cared about results, and I was delivering them. One Monday morning, he called me into his glass-walled office. The view of the city from his window was even better than my old apartments. "Chris, sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair opposite his large mahogany desk. "I've been going over the quarterly performance reviews." My stomach did a little flip. "Your work on the Peterson account was exceptional," he continued, getting straight to the point. "You basically saved that contract. Your team lead can't stop singing your praises." "Thank you, sir," I managed, feeling a flush of genuine pride. "I had a great team." "Don't be modest," he said with a slight smile. "I know who does the heavy lifting." Which brings me to my next point. We're launching a new initiative, codenamed Project Nightingale. It's our bid for the big leagues, a multimillion-dollar software suite for the healthcare industry. It's high stakes, high pressure, and the deadlines are going to be brutal. He paused, leaning forward, his eyes fixed on me. "I'm putting together a new leadership team to spearhead it. I want you on it, not as a junior member, as a deputy lead." The air left my lungs. This wasn't just a step up, it was a leap. It was the kind of career-defining opportunity that could change everything. It meant a new title, new responsibilities, and, most importantly, a serious promotion with a salary to match. It was a lifeline. "Of course," he cautioned. "It's going to mean war room hours. Late nights, working weekends, total commitment. There's no room for error. But if we land this, you'll be writing your own ticket in this company. So, what do you say?" "I'm in," I said, my voice filled with a conviction I hadn't felt in months. 100%. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I won't let you down." I walked out of that office feeling 10 feet tall. The suffocating weight of my home life seemed to lift, replaced by a surge of adrenaline and hope. This was my way out. This was my future. I was so high on the news, I broke my own rule and shared it at the dinner table that night. I presented it as a win for all of us. "It's a huge opportunity," I explained, trying to inject some enthusiasm into the dead air. The promotion would come with a significant salary increase. It would make things a lot easier around here. Laura grunted from behind her phone. "So you'll be working even more? Great." My mom put down her fork with a delicate, deliberate motion. "That's nice, dear," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "But what about the house? The gutters are clogged. The downstairs bathroom has a leaky faucet. I can't be expected to handle all these household repairs myself." I stared at her, my brief moment of joy evaporating like mist. "Mom, those are minor things. I can call a handyman. This is my career we're talking about. This is the very thing that allows me to pay for this house and any repairs it needs. There's no need to get defensive," she said, dabbing her lips with a napkin. "It just seems your priorities are askew. A man is supposed to take care of his home. Your father always took care of the home." The comparison to my dad was a low blow, and she knew it. It was designed to hurt, to put me back in my place. She wasn't proud of my success. She was threatened by it. A promotion meant I was becoming more powerful, more independent. It meant the balance of power was shifting, and she couldn't stand it. My success wasn't a resource for the family. It was a betrayal of her control. The crack that had formed between us widened into a deep, unbridgeable canyon. The argument over my promotion set the new, frigid tone for our household. I dove into Project Nightingale with a vengeance, using the punishing hours as a welcome excuse to be anywhere but home. The house was no longer a place of conflict. It was a place of silent, simmering hostility. We were roommates who despised each other. I began paying all the bills online from my office, meticulously saving every confirmation email. I wanted a digital paper trail. I wanted irrefutable proof of my contributions, even if it was only for my own peace of mind. One Saturday, while my mom and sister were out shopping, using a credit card I now knew existed, a fact that made my blood boil, I decided to tackle the mountain of junk mail that had been piling up on the entryway table. It was a task I'd been avoiding, but I needed to do something physical, something to distract from the rage churning in my gut. I was sorting the mail into two piles, shred and recycle, when I saw it. It was a thin envelope, wedged between a furniture catalog and a takeout menu. It was from a different credit card company than the one I'd found before, this one a major national bank. It was addressed to my mother, and it bore the same ominous red stamp as the last one. Account past due. My heart began to pound a heavy, rhythmic drum against my ribs. I thought I knew the scope of her deceit, but this was something new. With trembling hands, I tore it open. It wasn't a bill for luxury goods. It was a cash advance loan statement. She had taken out a $5,000 loan against the card 2 months ago. The interest rate was predatory, north of 25%. She hadn't made a single payment, but it was the memo section of the transaction that made me feel physically ill. It read, L. Miller University Tuition. Laura. My mother had taken out a high-interest cash advance to pay for my sister's college tuition. But that was impossible. I had personally set up a college fund for Laura with the inheritance money my grandparents had left me. I had been making monthly payments into it for years, and I had given my mother the account information to pay the tuition directly from it. The fund had more than enough to cover the semester. I stumbled back, leaning against the wall for support. The implications crashed down on me in a horrifying wave. They hadn't used the college fund. They had spent it. They had drained the money my grandparents had left for my sister's education, and then my mother had taken out a loan shark-level loan to cover it up, letting it fester and accrue crippling interest. When they came home, their arms laden with shopping bags, I was waiting for them in the living room. I didn't yell. My voice was eerily calm. I held up the statement. Explain this. My mother's face went white as a sheet. I don't know what that is. Don't lie to me, I said, my voice like ice. I know about Laura's college fund. I know it's gone. Where did the money go, Mom? Laura looked back and forth between us, her eyes wide with fear. My mother started to cry. We had expenses. The car needed repairs. The roof had a leak. All lies. I had paid for the car repairs. The roof was fine. Then Laura, my golden child sister, delivered the final, devastating blow. She started sobbing. I'm so sorry, Chris. I told her we should just ask you for the money. But she said you were already so stressed about the mortgage. She didn't want to bother you. She said you'd be mad if you knew the fund was empty. Her words, meant to sound like a confession, were a betrayal beyond measure. She knew. She knew the college fund was gone. She knew about the secret loan. She had been a willing participant in the entire cover-up. My own sister had watched me work myself to the bone, knowing they had stolen from her future and were now stealing from mine, and she hadn't said a single word. She was complicit in every lie. The last shred of brotherly affection I had for her died in that moment. After the revelation of the tuition fraud, something inside me irrevocably broke. The anger and hurt were still there, but they were now encased in a thick layer of cold, hard resolve. The emotional connection to my mother and sister was severed. I no longer saw them as family who had made mistakes. I saw them as adversaries. The silence in the house became absolute. We moved through the shared spaces like strangers in a morgue. The air was thick with unspoken accusations and unapologized for betrayals. They knew I knew everything, and they knew there was nothing they could say. So they said nothing. My life became compartmentalized. At work, I was a leader. I was decisive, respected, and in control. I threw myself into Project Nightingale, the long hours and complex problems a welcome anesthetic for the pain of my home life. I was building something new, something that was mine, and it was my only salvation. At home, I was a ghost. I'd enter through the garage, go straight to my room, and only emerge late at night for a bowl of cereal when I knew they were asleep. I continued to document everything, but with a new sense of purpose. It was no longer just for my own sanity. It was for my own defense. I compiled a dossier, a complete financial record of the past year. Every bill paid, every grocery receipt, every bank statement, every deceitful credit card bill. I saved it all to a secure cloud server, a digital arsenal waiting for a war I now knew was inevitable. As the holidays approached, the tension in the house became almost unbearable. Christmas, a time that was once my favorite, now loomed like a threat. A part of me, the logical part, screamed at me to just leave, to pack a bag, disappear, and let them face the consequences of their own actions. But another part, the part that still held the memory of my father, resisted. I couldn't shake the image of him hanging lights on the house, the smell of his famous Christmas roast beef filling the kitchen. Leaving before Christmas felt like conceding defeat, like letting them erase his memory and everything he stood for. So I made a final, fateful decision. I would give them one last Christmas. But this one would be on my terms. It wouldn't be a celebration. It would be a test. A final, silent judgment. I would do it all. I would buy the tree. I would decorate the house. I would plan and cook a feast fit for a king. I would create a perfect, shimmering illusion of a happy family Christmas. I would hold up this beautiful, fragile thing to them, an offering made of my own sweat and pain, and I would watch with cold, clinical detachment as they inevitably smashed it to pieces. I knew they would. Their entitlement had become a black hole, consuming everything without a trace of gratitude. But I needed to see it happen. I needed that final, undeniable proof that there was nothing left to save. So, in the weeks leading up to the 25th, I became a whirlwind of festive activity. I bought the biggest tree on the lot. I strung lights until the house glowed. I planned a multi-course menu. My mom and sister watched my preparations with a mixture of confusion and wariness. They didn't understand what I was doing, but they didn't offer to help. They just observed, like vultures circling, waiting to see what would happen next. They had no idea they weren't watching me prepare for a holiday. They were watching me prepare for an execution. Christmas Eve felt like the final scene of a play. The stage was set, the actors were in place, and the air was thick with unspoken lines. I had spent the entire day cooking, the kitchen filled with the rich smells of turkey brining and pies baking. The house looked like something out of a magazine. The tree was a cascade of blinking lights and shiny ornaments, and I had even lit a fire in the fireplace, its warm glow a stark contrast to the icy atmosphere between us. That evening, we gathered in the living room for the perfunctory opening of gifts. I had, in a moment of what I can only describe as masochistic habit, bought them presents. For my mother, an expensive cashmere sweater she'd been talking about for months. For Laura, the new flagship smartphone she'd been dropping hints about. I had put them on my own credit card, adding to the mountain of debt I was shouldering for them. It was a final, bitter piece of irony. They opened their gifts with a practiced, hollow enthusiasm. "Oh, Chris, it's beautiful," my mother said, holding up the sweater without meeting my eyes. Laura was already absorbed in setting up her new phone, barely grunting a thanks. There was nothing for me under the tree. Not a card, not a pair of socks, not a chocolate bar. Nothing. I had expected it, but the stark reality of it still landed like a punch to the gut. It was such a clear, unambiguous statement: you give, we take. That is the entirety of our relationship. Later, I was in the kitchen, pouring myself a glass of water when I heard my mother's hushed tones from the living room. She was on the phone, undoubtedly with her sister, my Aunt Carol. I froze, pressing myself against the wall in the darkened hallway, and listened. "I just don't know what to do, Carol," my mother was saying, her voice a theatrical whisper of supposed despair. "He's been acting so strange. All this decorating and cooking. It's like he's trying to prove some kind of point. He just walks around with this dark cloud over his head, judging us." There was a pause as Aunt Carol spoke on the other end. I could imagine her, clucking her tongue in sympathy, stirring the pot. "I know," my mother continued, her voice dropping lower. "You're right. He's 30 years old, living in my house, and acting like he's the king. He needs a dose of reality. You said it yourself last week. Sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind. It's time he learned what the real world is like without me to fall back on. He needs a good, hard push, without me to fall back on." The delusion was so absolute, it was almost a work of art. In her narrative, she was the safety net, not the anchor dragging me to the bottom. And Aunt Carol, my seemingly sweet, supportive aunt, was the one whispering poison in her ear, giving her the justification she needed to do what she was about to do. A good, hard push. It was a declaration of war. I backed away silently, the glass of water forgotten in my hand. The last flickering ember of doubt in my mind was extinguished. This wasn't a spontaneous act of frustration. It was premeditated. They had discussed it. They had planned it. The Christmas dinner tomorrow wasn't just a meal. It was an ambush. I went up to my room and sat on the edge of my bed in the dark. I didn't feel sadness anymore. The pain had been burned away, leaving behind a cold, hard certainty. I finally saw them for exactly who they were. My mother, a master manipulator crippled by her own entitlement, and my aunt, a jealous enabler hiding behind a mask of familial concern. I lay awake for hours, not in turmoil, but in quiet contemplation. I thought about my dad, about his strength and his integrity. I knew what he would want me to do. He would want me to fight for myself, to honor the life he had worked so hard to give me. And so, in the silent darkness of Christmas Eve, I finalized my own plan. It was no longer just about leaving. It was about taking back the narrative. They were about to push me, but they had no idea I was about to push back with the full, undeniable weight of the truth. The moment I closed my bedroom door after walking away from the Christmas dinner table, it was like a switch flipped. The anger, the hurt, the shock. It all receded, replaced by a singular, focused clarity. There would be no more arguments, no more pleading, no more trying to make them see reason. Words were useless now. Only action mattered. I didn't slam the door. I closed it softly, the click of the latch sounding like a final, definitive period on a long, painful chapter of my life. For a few minutes, I just stood in the dark, breathing, steady. My heart was a steady drum, not a frantic hummingbird. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by an ice-cold purpose. Then I turned on my desk lamp and got to work. My movements were methodical, almost robotic. I pulled my two largest suitcases from the back of the closet, the ones I hadn't used since I moved out of my first apartment. They were dusty ghosts of a past life. I wiped them down and opened them on my bed. First, the documents. My work laptop, my external hard drives containing my entire digital life, my passport, birth certificate, social security card, and the file folder containing the deed to my car. These were the items that proved my existence as an individual separate from this family unit. They went into my backpack, the most important bag. Then clothes. I opened my drawers and closet and began a ruthless triage. My work suits, my dress shirts, the expensive shoes I'd bought for a friend's wedding, they went in one suitcase. They represented the man I was out in the world, the competent professional. Then my casual clothes, jeans, sweaters, workout gear. I paused, my hand hovering over an old, faded university sweatshirt. It had been my favorite for years. I remembered wearing it while studying for finals, while celebrating with friends, while watching movies with my dad. I held it for a moment, then folded it and put it back in the drawer. I was taking no ghosts with me. I packed my toiletries, my phone charger, a few books I was in the middle of reading. Every item was a conscious choice. This is essential. This is baggage. The process was a strange and powerful form of therapy, a physical act of severing ties. I was shedding a skin, leaving behind the version of myself that had tolerated the intolerable for far too long. The entire process took less than an hour. My 2 suitcases and my backpack stood by the door like silent soldiers, ready for deployment. Next, I sat at my computer. I opened the browser and logged into my secret bank account, the escape fund. The balance was healthier than I'd thought. The long nights on Project Nightingale and the freelance gigs had paid off. It was enough. Not enough to be comfortable, but enough to be free. I booked a room at an extended stay motel on the other side of town. Clean, anonymous, with its own kitchenette. 1 week, paid in advance. My first act of true independence in over a year. At 2 a.m., the house was as silent as a tomb. I took one last look around the bedroom I'd grown up in. I saw the pencil marks on the doorframe where my dad had tracked my height. I saw the poster of a band I'd loved in high school still tacked to the wall. It was just a room, a collection of objects and memories, all of which now felt like they belonged to someone else. I picked up my bags. The weight was substantial, but it was a grounding, satisfying weight. I was carrying my entire life, and it felt right. I crept down the stairs, each step a silent declaration of departure. I kept my eyes fixed on the front door, refusing to look into the living room where the Christmas tree lights were still blinking merrily, a monument to a fantasy that had finally shattered. I turned the deadbolt with excruciating slowness, the soft snick of the mechanism sounding like a gunshot in the silence. I slipped outside into the biting cold. The snow was still falling, blanketing the world in a fresh layer of white. Felt like a clean slate. I didn't look back. I loaded my bags into the trunk of my car, got in, and drove away without turning on the radio. The only sound was the crunch of my tires on the snow, the sound of my escape. For the first few days, my world was the 4 walls of my motel room. The silence from my family was absolute, a black hole of communication. I worked remotely, my laptop a portal to a world where I was still a valued professional. I ordered food, watched TV, and tried not to think. But the silence was a message in itself. It wasn't the silence of worry or concern. It was the silence of erasure. I had been neatly and efficiently removed from their lives, and there was no void left behind. It was a chilling, painful confirmation of my disposability. Then, on the 8th day, the silence broke and the war began. Started with a single text from Laura, a short, sharp dagger. How could you do that to Mom? She's a complete wreck because of you. I hope you're happy. I stared at the message, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. A wreck? My mother was a lot of things, but fragile wasn't one of them. Before I could even decide how to respond, or whether to respond at all, my phone buzzed again. It was an email from my Aunt Lisa, my mother's older sister. The subject line was simply disgusted. The email was a masterpiece of second-hand hysteria. Christopher, your mother called me in tears. I have never heard her so distraught. She told me everything. How you flew into a rage on Christmas, screaming and yelling. How you threw your plate against the wall like a child, and then stormed out, abandoning her to face foreclosure and a mountain of bills. After she took you in, after everything she's done for you, your father would be ashamed. The lies were so audacious, so specific. I almost had to admire the artistry. Throwing a plate? It was the perfect, theatrical detail to paint me as unhinged. Then the call started. My cousin Caleb, sounding uncomfortable and disappointed. My grandmother, her voice trembling with righteous indignation, telling me I had broken my mother's heart. My mother hadn't just kicked me out. She had launched a coordinated, scorched earth campaign to annihilate my character. She was salting the earth, ensuring that I would have no allies, no support system, no one to turn to in the entire family. She was isolating me completely. I sat on the edge of the stiff motel bed, my phone vibrating with yet another incoming call from an angry relative, and I felt the last vestiges of my pain and sadness burn away, replaced by a white-hot, clarifying rage. The passive victim I had been for a year was gone. She wanted a villain? Fine. But I wouldn't play the villain in her story. I would be the hero of my own. And the hero's weapon is the truth. I opened my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I didn't write an emotional plea. I didn't engage in a he said, she said debate. I composed my statement with the cold, brutal precision of a legal document. I went to my social media page, the one I rarely used, and created a new post. I made it public. I tagged every single family member I was connected to, my mother, my sister, all my aunts, uncles, and cousins. The title was simple: The Truth About Christmas and the Past Year. I began calmly. To my family and friends, many of you have heard a story about why I left my mother's home on Christmas. The story you heard is a work of fiction. Here are the facts. Then, I unleashed the arsenal I had been building for months. First, I uploaded the spreadsheet. A complete, itemized log of every single bill I had paid since I moved back in. Mortgage, $1,200 per month. Utilities, $150/month. Groceries, $800/month. The numbers were stark, undeniable. Second, I uploaded a PDF portfolio of the key bank statements. I highlighted my salary deposits and the corresponding withdrawals that matched the bills, proving the money came from me and me alone. Third, and most devastatingly, I uploaded the scanned copies of my mother's credit card statements. The $10,000 balance at the department store. The luxury purchases. The secret cash advance loan. I included the statement for Laura's empty college fund, showing its balance before I moved in and its zero balance 6 months later. I wrote, I did not abandon my mother with a mountain of bills. I was the only one paying them. I did not leave because of a tantrum. I left because I was told to, and because I was no longer willing to finance a lifestyle of deceit and luxury while sacrificing my own financial future. The evidence is all here. I am not asking you to take my side. I am asking you to look at the truth. I took a deep breath, my finger hovering over the post button. This was the point of no return. I clicked it, and the digital bomb was dropped. This was the moment that changed everything, the moment I finally took back control of my life and my own story. Thank you so much for sticking with me to this point. You guys are amazing. If you're here, please do me a huge favor and hit that like button and comment the number 1 down below, just so I know you made it this far with me. It doesn't just help more people find this story. It lets me know that my experience means something to someone out there. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to keep sharing the rest of this journey. The immediate aftermath of my post was a deafening silence. The barrage of angry texts and calls stopped as if a switch had been flipped. For about 3 hours, there was nothing. I could picture it perfectly. Phones buzzing across the family network, people clicking the links, the slow, dawning horror as they scrolled through the undeniable proof. The story my mother had so carefully constructed was being systematically dismantled, not by my anger, but by her own receipts. I turned off my phone. I couldn't handle the inevitable second wave, whatever form it might take. I walked to a nearby diner, ordered a black coffee and a burger, and sat in a booth, watching the traffic go by. I felt strangely calm. The truth was out. It was a wild animal now, and I couldn't control what it did. But at least it was free, and so was I. When I returned to my motel room that evening, I turned my phone back on. It was flooded with notifications, but they were different now. The anger was gone, replaced by a mixture of shock, confusion, and, from a few, profound apology. The first was a text from my cousin Caleb. It was long and rambling. Chris, oh my God, I just read everything. I feel like such an idiot. My mom, Aunt Lisa, is in complete shock. She's been on the phone with my dad for an hour. We had no idea. I am so sorry for the message I sent. I should have known better. I should have trusted you. Then came the voicemail. It was from Aunt Mary, my father's sister. Her voice, usually so warm and cheerful, was filled with a cold fury. Christopher, it's your Aunt Mary. I just got off the phone with your grandmother. I read her every line item from those credit card statements. The silence on the other end was something to behold. She took a deep breath. I want to tell you something my brother, your father, said to me not long before he passed. He told me, Mary, I love Janet, but her wants have a way of becoming needs, and other people's needs have a way of becoming her problem. He worried about this. He worried she would lean on you too hard. Tears sprang to my eyes. It was a message from the past, a validation from the person whose opinion mattered most to me. My dad had seen it. He had known. He would be so damn proud of you right now, kiddo, she continued, her voice softening. Proud of your hard work, proud of your strength, and proud that you stood up for the truth. You did the right thing. Don't let anyone, and I mean anyone, tell you otherwise. Call me when you're ready. We'll get you through this. The family civil war had begun. Caleb later told me that Aunt Lisa had a screaming match with my mother over the phone, accusing her of lying and using her. My mother, in response, had apparently doubled down, claiming I had forged the documents. But it was too late. The proof was too overwhelming. No one believed her. The most satisfying piece of news came from Caleb a few days later. You're not going to believe this, he texted. Aunt Carol called my mom to try and smooth things over. Defend your mom. My mom told her that she knew Carol had been encouraging it all along and that she was just as much to blame. Then she hung up on her. I don't think they'll be speaking again for a very long time. Justice. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was the quiet, satisfying click of broken relationships and exposed lies. My mother and Aunt Carol had tried to isolate me, but in the end, they had only isolated themselves. They were adrift on a lifeboat of their own making, and no one was coming to rescue them. 6 months can feel like a lifetime. The person who fled into the snowy night from his childhood home felt like a different man from the one who now stood in his own apartment, watching the morning sun glint off the skyscrapers. The extended stay motel had given way to a bright, modern one-bedroom apartment. It was smaller than my first place, but it felt infinitely larger. It was filled with my things, my choices, my peace. There were no ghosts here. Project Nightingale had been a monumental success, exceeding all expectations. As promised, Mr. Henderson had promoted me to senior project lead. The title came with a corner office, a small one, but it had a window, and a salary that finally allowed me to breathe. I had paid off the credit card debt I'd accumulated during my year of servitude. I was rebuilding my savings. I was rebuilding my life. I hadn't spoken a single word to my mother since Christmas. I had blocked her number, and Aunt Carol's as well. I heard whispers through the family grapevine. My mother had been forced to sell the house. My father's house. The foundation I had nearly destroyed myself to protect. She and Laura had moved into a small, cramped apartment across town. The proceeds from the sale, I later learned, had barely been enough to cover the mortgage, the secret loans, and the credit card debt. They had nothing left. A part of me, a small, residual part, felt a twinge of sadness at the loss of the house. But it was a fleeting emotion, quickly replaced by the overwhelming relief that its chains were no longer wrapped around my neck. One sunny Saturday, I received a text from an unknown number. Chris, it's Laura. Can we please meet? Just for a coffee. I'll pay. The last 2 words were what convinced me. It was a small but significant admission of a new reality. I agreed, and we met at a neutral coffee shop. The change in her was startling. The entitled, carefree college student was gone. In her place was a young woman who looked tired and worn down. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple, generic sweater. Thanks for meeting me, she said, her voice quiet. She couldn't quite meet my eyes. What's on your mind, Laura? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. I wasn't there to fight, but I wasn't there to offer absolution either. It's been hard, she stammered, stirring her latte with a plastic stick. The new apartment is awful. Mom. She's impossible to live with. Now that you're not there to be her target, everything is my fault. The lack of money is my fault. The fact that we had to sell the house is my fault. The fact that her life isn't perfect is my fault. She finally looked at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She blames me for you leaving. I just listened, taking a slow sip of my coffee. I didn't say, I told you so. I didn't say, welcome to my world. I was so stupid, Chris, she whispered, a tear finally escaping and tracing a path down her cheek. I just went along with it all because it was easier, because I was getting what I wanted. I never stopped to think about what it was costing you. I see it now. I see everything. And I am so sorry. It was the apology I had never expected to receive. And it was genuine. I could see it in her eyes. I know, I said softly. And then I offered her the only thing I could. You'll know when you've had enough, Laura. You'll reach a point where the fear of leaving is less than the pain of staying. And when that day comes, you call me. I'll help you get on your feet. But you have to be the one to walk out the door. She nodded, a flicker of something. Hope, maybe, in her eyes. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a bridge. A small, fragile bridge across a canyon of betrayal. But a bridge nonetheless. A few weeks after my meeting with Laura, on a quiet Tuesday evening, there was a knock at my apartment door. It was a sharp, insistent knock that set my teeth on edge. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole, and a jolt went through me. It was my mother. She was standing there, looking smaller and older than I remembered. She was holding a grocery store apple pie in a cheap plastic container. The absurdity of the gesture. A $5 pie meant to heal a wound that was a mile deep was almost laughable. I took a deep breath, composed myself, and opened the door. I did not step back. I did not smile. I simply stood there, a human barrier to the life I had built. Christopher, she said, attempting a bright, motherly smile that looked grotesque on her strained face. I was in the neighborhood. I brought you a pie. What do you want, Mom? My voice was cold, flat. There was no room for negotiation in it. Her smile faltered. I thought we could talk. It's been so long. A mother should be able to see her son. A son should be able to trust his mother. I countered, my voice unyielding. The mask slipped. For a fleeting second, I saw the flash of pure, unadulterated fury in her eyes. The same fury I had seen when I'd questioned her about the internet bill. It was the rage of a queen whose authority has been challenged. But she quickly suppressed it, replacing it with a look of deep, theatrical sorrow. Look, she said, her voice taking on a wounded, weary tone. I know things got out of hand, but let's be fair. We both made mistakes, Chris. We both said and did things we regret. That was it. The non-apology. The master manipulator's final gambit. To equate her calculated, year-long campaign of financial and emotional abuse with my act of self-preservation. In her mind, her actions and my reactions were equivalent sins. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry for the consequences she was now facing. I looked at her, at the carefully feigned sadness, the cheap pie, the desperate attempt to regain a foothold in my life, and I felt the last bit of emotional attachment I had to her turn to dust and blow away. There was nothing left. No anger, no hate, no love. There was only emptiness. I didn't argue. I didn't list her crimes. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a fight. I simply looked her in the eye, held her gaze for a long moment, and then I slowly and silently closed the door in her face. The soft click of the latch was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a cage door locking from the outside. It was the sound of a final, irrevocable end. Later that night, unable to sleep, I was going through an old box of my dad's things that Aunt Mary had sent me, mostly photos and keepsakes. At the very bottom, beneath a stack of old tax returns, was a thick, sealed envelope. In my father's familiar, strong handwriting was my name, Christopher. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was a letter, dated just a few months before he died. My dearest Chris, it began. If you are reading this, it means I am gone. I'm writing because a father needs to tell his son things he can't always say out loud. I love your mother with all my heart, but my love for her does not make me blind. She has a fear inside her, a fear of not having enough that makes her grasping. Her love can sometimes feel like a cage, even when she means it to be a fortress. I have spent a lot of my energy over the years acting as a buffer, trying to protect you and Laura from the sharp edges of her insecurities. That job is not yours, son. Your job is to build your own life. Do not ever let her make you feel that her happiness is your responsibility. It is not. Do not sacrifice your future on the altar of her fears. The house is just wood and nails and memories. Your life, your integrity, your happiness. That is my real legacy. Go and build it. And know, wherever I am, I will be prouder of you than you can ever imagine. I sat there, in the quiet of my new apartment, and wept. Not for the family I had lost, but for the father who had known me, truly known me, and had given me his blessing to be free all those years ago. I'm sitting by my window now. The city outside is a tapestry of blinking lights, each one a story, a life. It's quiet in my apartment. It's a clean, peaceful quiet, the kind that lets you hear your own thoughts. It's a silence I earned. Took me a long time and a lot of therapy to fully unpack that year. The real betrayal, I've come to understand, was never about the money. The money was just a symptom. The real betrayal was the slow, creeping realization that I was not seen as a son, but as a resource, a utility. And when that utility was no longer convenient, it was to be discarded. To look at your own mother and see, not love, but a cost-benefit analysis in her eyes. That's a wound that scars you in a place that no one else can see. For so long, I was obsessed with the idea of protecting my father's legacy, and I thought that legacy was a physical place. A house on a quiet suburban street. I nearly martyred myself for that house. I sacrificed my finances, my friendships, my mental health, all to protect wood and nails and a rapidly fading memory. His letter taught me the truth. His legacy wasn't the house. It was the lesson he had tried to teach me my whole life. That a man's worth is measured by his integrity, by his ability to stand on his own 2 feet, and by the strength to walk away from something that is breaking him, no matter how much he once loved it. I still see my Aunt Mary. We talk on the phone every Sunday. She has become the matriarch I always needed. I still talk to Laura, too. She moved out of my mother's apartment a few months ago. She has 2 jobs, a tiny studio apartment, and for the first time in her life, she's proud of herself. Our relationship is still fragile, but it's real. I don't know what the future holds. I'm reconnecting with old friends. I'm thinking about dating again. I'm building a life that is quietly, peacefully, and completely my own. And I know, with a certainty that fills my entire soul, that my father would be proud. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it reached you in some meaningful way. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to make a difficult choice to protect your own peace? I'd be honored if you'd share your thoughts in the comments below. And please, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Take care of yourselves.